Now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome, my guys. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the best podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine, did I say Mike Stine before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just make sure. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with credits including being a member of the APF1 Certified Natural Balance Farrier. I'm going to get all this correct here soon. The official farrier of the 2018 World Equestrian Games and 2017 American Eventing Championship. With all those credits, I introduce to you Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you this morning,
I'm
Travis?
doing well. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is our very first episode for Equine Dynamics, and Mike Stine is going to tell us all about what he knows about horses, about farriers. Like I said, we're creating sounder horses from the ground up. And first of all, before we get started, Mike, how was your Christmas, by the way?
It was okay. I survived it, you know?
Did you get anything special? Was Santa good to you?
I got a roll of toilet paper without the toilet paper on it.
What do you do with that?
One of my customers gave me a full roll of toilet paper last year because couldn't get toilet paper. This year she gave me the roll written on there that, you don't need toilet paper this year because we can get it.
Right. And you had a very successful New Year. Were you in bed by 9 o'clock like me?
Pretty much, yes.
It's a shame when you're in your 20s, you get I'm going to stay up till midnight, even when you're 3 years old. So I guess your excitement between the ages of 3 and 5 year old and being 20 years old is about the same. But when you get old enough, you're just like, you know what? We've seen it a couple times. It's not worth it. I'll see you in the morning type deal.
Yes, exactly.
What else you got going on? Anything exciting coming up? You've been busy, I'm assuming. Now, today we have horrible weather. It's raining. If we lose power here, because we do broadcast just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in a small little town we like to call Marshville, home of Randy Travis, and we have about 2,500 people here and one guy who works the electric poles and stuff if the power goes out. So if the power goes out, we're having bad rainstorms and windstorms here, so hopefully we won't lose power during the show. Now, I have a question for you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
They were talking about, and I can't get my internet up right now, but they were talking about something. In this episode, we're going to talk about shoes or no shoes on horses. We're also going to talk about how often should hoof care be done, and also what is a low palmar angle. Now, I was reading an article, something about they were talking about pulling shoes during an event, during a dressage event. 80% of them said it's good. 70% said it's bad. When would you pull shoes during an event?
During an event?
Yes.
Well, that's going to involve a lot of different things. A lot of the competitions I deal directly with are 3-day event horses. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there are some shoe changes during the competition. There are people that will run something a little different for the dressage arena as opposed to cross country. A lot of them run the same setup all the way through. But, it depends on arena surface. It depends on horse. It depends on rider. There are 1,000 different variables that you got to consider.
Now, why would they vote against pulling shoes during an event? Why would they vote against that?
Why would they vote against it?
I don't know. Unfortunately, my internet's not.
Yeah, that's one end I'm not completely involved in. And, that's...
would it cost... would it be an advantage, or would it be cheating, or, you're supposed to ride with whatever shoes you got? Let me see if I can pull the article here while we're discussing it.
Right. I kind of think you ought to run with what you brought to the track myself.
Okay.
But there are situations where you can change the weight and load on a horse to create a different stride arc, is what some of them are trying to do. They, get a little more flash, a little more bang, whatever in the arena. But, there are some real questions on how some of that is done at times. And there are so many different tricks you could do with working with the mechanics of the horse. Some of them are very positive ways to handle it, and there are things that we do or have been done that have been outlawed from showing altogether over the years. If you look at like the Memphis bar on the walking horse.
Right. All right. So here's another question I have for you. We did lose power here probably about 30 minutes ago, so everything's just slowly potting up here. So give me 1 sec while we bear through this. I do have a question for you. So pulling shoes during an event was one article I wanted to talk about, and we'll dive into that later on in the show. One thing I do want to ask: a pregnancy of a horse lasts about 11 months from beginning to end. Lasts about 11 months. The foal is fully weaned after about 4 to 6 months. Young horses attain adult size at the age of 5 years old. At how soon can a horse have shoes put on it?
It depends on why.
Okay.
I have put plates on babies a few weeks old because we're working on a limb alignment. In an ideal situation, if the feet are maintained on a regular basis, we don't have any strange alignment problems going on, all that sort of deal. In my book, it's better to let the horse mature. But there are a lot of situations where horses are pushed to do things before they're completely matured out. So it depends on the discipline and everything else. I think that horses need to grow up before we push on them.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short little break here. Hopefully get my internet up and running here. And we're going to talk about when to shoe horses, or shoes or no shoes on a horse, depending on what they're doing. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. I'll clean all that up, by the way. All right. We'll come back, and I'm going to talk about your email address, and then we're going to talk about what's better, shoeing a horse or leaving them barefoot. You ready?
Yep.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Don't forget, if you have any questions, we want you guys to be part of the show. This is going to be a very long-running series. It's going to be full with a bunch of information and hopefully a lot of entertainment in the same sense as well, as we create sounder horses from the ground up. You can email Mike Stine at any time at equinedynamics.com. And please, in the subject line, he's got 50 people working in his office. He needs to make sure these emails go directly to him. Put podcast in the subject line. If you have any questions about your horse, any comments you want to add about your horse, any pictures you want to share with Mike, he'll be happy to look over them. We'll discuss them on the very next podcast, and we'll let you know when that podcast will air as well. That's equinedynamics.com. And over to my far right-hand side is the master himself, Mike Stine.
Hello, Travis.
So when a horse, you said... When a horse is a baby, you do put shoes on it. Is the equivalent of putting braces on a child if they have not bad legs, but like Forrest Gump had the braces on his legs? Is it almost the same thing as putting pads on the baby horse's feet?
Yes,
to straighten them out.
Similar situation. Ideally, a baby will come out and move around young enough to straighten their legs out on their own by a certain time, but there are certain time frame windows, depending on the joint in the leg, that we have to stay within to get things done. And too many times people will wait too late, and they'll ask you to do something with an alignment problem, and you're outside the time window where you can. But that's something we're going to be working directly with our vets on, and dealing with vets that deal with this type problem on a regular basis. And you need to work with vets and farriers that are a good team in this kind of situation.
All right, so the main question to start off the first topic for the day is, what's better, shoeing a horse or leaving them barefoot? Now, the reason why I ask that is because we have 2 ponies out there on our pasture, and they're not ridden or anything, and they don't have shoes on it. And then we have our quote-unquote show horse, and she's got shoes on her. Now, my personal opinion, how can metal shoes be good for a horse? I'm thinking, when I play basketball, I have to have the $150, Michael Air Jordans because it protects my feet. How do metal plates on the bottom of a horse help the horse's feet? I would think you want something like memory foam on the horse's feet. So explain that a little bit. Why would you shoe them, and why would you not shoe them? And the advantage to is there different types of metal that you put on the foot of the horse?
Well, on your guys that are hanging out in the field, unless we have a problem, say laminitis, something like that, they are just as happy as anything hanging out doing what they do. And they're good at doing what they do, which is, well, they produce organic matter. But, on a horse, you've got to have something that will hold up to the pressure. You can take a metal shoe. Now, when I shoe horses, I'm not cold shoeing. My shoes are modified for that situation for that horse.
Now, explain cold shoeing for me. I know everyone else out there knows, but I don't.
Well, I pull a shoe out and I beat it around the closest fit that I can to the foot to where I can nail it up.
Okay.
And hopefully I'm nailing it up in the right location on the foot around the center of rotation and all that sort of deal.
Okay.
On a steel shoe, hot shoeing, if I need to change the mechanics on the front of the shoe, well, I can hammer roll it out. I can rocker it. I can do a lot of things. I can broaden out a branch. I can narrow up a branch and just completely change the way that shoe reacts with the ground. So that would be some of the difference there.
Okay. And so when should you shoe a horse? When is it time for you to shoe a horse? Or do you even think that like your horse needs shoes or just leave them barefoot for what they're doing? Is it when they're in like a traditional rider, a trail rider? Do you need shoes on a trail horse? Do you need shoes on a like a lawn ornament? I know you said no on ours, but when do you have shoes on a horse and when do you don't have shoes on a horse?
Well, as far as trail riding horses, it's going to vary with every horse. Now, on your show horse, when I came in here, we shot lateral x-rays. We've got some bone column alignment problems, low palmar angle, which we're going to talk about later all the way around. I can mechanically change that situation with the horseshoe.
Okay.
And, on a trail riding horse, is that an issue? When I worked for Dr. Mansman, he suggested doing laterals at least once a year. Most of the horses that I'm shoeing are one of two things. They've got damage, mechanical damage of some sort, or they're competitive horses.
Now, when you say mechanical damage, like from birth or something like that, or is it something because they haven't been shoed correctly in the past?
There is some incompetent shoeing out there, more than I would like to admit to, but some of it is because things were not taken care of when they were younger. Some of it is because of what the rider is doing to the horse. We don't really shoe horses for the horse. We shoe horses for what we do to the horse. And on your trail riding horses, if you can get reasonable thickness under the sole, if we can tough it up, if we hadn't got any crazy alignment problem that we have to deal with, if we hadn't got tendon and ligament damage that we have to support, and there's a whole lot of ifs down the road, there's no problem with a lot of them going barefoot. In fact, the horses that I do that are trail riding horses primarily are going barefoot. If you're just putting something on because they get sore-footed every now and then, that's not even necessarily the best reason to shoe a horse. Most of my trail people, if they need something, they'll put a set of boots on.
See, I was always taught, and my wife and I have been married together for almost coming up on 8 years now, but we've been together for almost 14 years. I know what took so long. But I've always thought that horses, no matter what, always had to have shoes on them. And in this case, I guess that's not the case.
No, that is definitely not the case. And, you take my gelding, Sally, he's a Mustang. He's got big, thick walls. At 14.3, he's got thicker hoof walls than most large warm bloods. You could gallop him down a railroad track without hurting those feet. You take some of these thoroughbreds that are very thin-footed, and some of their feet that have not always been maintained well are very unstable, and they end up loading the sole and loading the perimeter of the coffin bone. That's not a good situation. Now, some of those horses need some help.
Now, are there? I know it might be rare. I mean, are there horses that ride in events with no shoes on?
Some of the lower level horses will.
Okay.
And some of them do just fine because it's what you're demanding of the horse. And they can do fine. It's just like putting studs in shoes or not studs in shoes on a horse that's going to go on cross country. Your upper level horses, you're going to need to be able to work with that and need to change traction devices as you need to. on, and because you're going to be on mud, you're going to be on hard clay, you're going to be on whatever that course presents. And, on the lower level horses, a lot of them for an easy gallop. I mean, some of them might be going over an 18-inch fence, as opposed to horses that are going to be crossing 4.5-foot fences and really moving out.
Now, hoof care is a big deal. And when we come back, Mike Stine will get into actually how regular you should have hoof care done. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics right here with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. I saw the lights flicker. Were you freaking out?
Maybe
a little bit. I saw a light flicker. I'm like, oh, please just stay on for another 30 minutes and we'll be okay. Once the 30 minutes is done, I can shut everything down. And look, I just got the internet back up right here. Just came up. Let's see if I can find that article real quick. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, a official farrier for the 2018 Equestrian Games and also the 2017 American Eventing Championship. If you have any questions or comments, we want you to be part of the show, and the way you do that is go over to equinedynamics.com. There's a little spot there. You can send us an email. Make sure you put podcast up in the subject headline so it'll come right to Mike Stine. His secretary and the other people in his office won't throw it away or get confused with some other program he's got going on. So just put podcasts up there. You can share stories. You can share pictures. Mike Stine loves to see all that stuff and read all that stuff. And we'll give you, we'll actually respond to your questions that you have on the next podcast that we do. We're going to do a podcast every Monday for the next 3 months. So make sure you subscribe and like and do all the stuff that links us to you and you to us as well. And something that links us to everything is Mike Stine over to my far right-hand side. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Travis?
I'm doing well. Right now, the power is somewhat staying steady, so hopefully we can get everything done here before the power loses out. There's a big windstorm, big rainstorm that's been cutting through the area here. Now, I have a question for you. The show horse that we have has shoes on, and our fields get a little muddy and stuff. What happens? Is there bad? I guess is it bad for a horse to walk through mud? And I'm thinking the obvious question is probably, or the answer is yes. Is it bad for a shoed horse to be walking through this clay mud and cause that suction to throw what they call throw a shoe? Is it bad for them to walk in this mud with shoes on? Would you take the shoes off and put them back on when the land gets dry? I mean, how does that work? Or what's your recommendation, I should say?
There again, depends on the situation with the horse. Have you been losing shoes on your horse?
If it gets really rainy out, this front pasture doesn't drain very well, so she will lose one, like usually the back one or something like that. She'll lose one of the back ones.
Right.
But at least once every rainy season, we'll lose maybe 2 to 3 shoes during the rainy season, which is about 3 months.
Right. I've not worked with her long enough to see that yet.
Right.
Because I'm fairly recent on this game with her. But you could move to, say, Arizona during the rainy season, but reality is when it's wet, it's wet. And what are you doing with the horse? Your horse staying in training, coming out? What's the deal? Horses will pull a shoe occasionally. We'll see what happens with the changes on her. And ideally, for the foot to stay soaking wet, it's not perfect. Horses are out in the plains in out in the west, where it's relatively dry most of the year. But the reality is, sometimes, guess what? They're wet. And
so if my horse loses one of its shoes, how soon should that shoe be replaced, or should it be okay until the next? Because you come every 4 or 6 weeks that you come to the house here. Or to the farm, I should say.
I think I've got y'all set up around 5 weekish.
So how is it okay? Is it okay for the horse to walk with 3 shoes as long as she's not being ridden? Or I guess it wouldn't make any sense for her to be ridden with one shoe missing, because that would throw her balance completely off. No.
Well, take one of your shoes off and run around for a while.
I'll just run in a circle.
Sure, exactly. But no, I mean, I try to take care of problems pretty quick. I'm not going to mess around with it very long. And there are situations if you got a horse that's going to shut down for the winter, sometimes it's not a bad thing to get shoes off of them, depending on the situation. Now, with a horse with a palmar angle alignment problem, as soon as you pull the shoe off, we're going to drop that right back down to where you probably don't want it to be.
So let's talk about hoof care and how regular should you have hoof care done, and what is involved with just plain hoof care?
Just plain hoof care, just the act of hoof care, period. There are people who try to stretch it way out. The problem is we've got a certain time window in there where we can keep the mechanics right for the bone column we're working under. And that's what you shoe horses more for what's going on with the bone column, what's going on with the body of the horse, more than the feet as far as dealing with what I deal with, which is primarily therapeutic issues or competitive horses to minimize damage, better performance, ease of movement, whatever it may be. If you've got a horse that's going to be let down for a while, it's not a bad idea sometimes to pull a shoe on them. On the other end, during your letdown period, if we need to make changes in that horse, it's time to make changes.
Now, what do you consider a letdown period?
Going out of work, lay up for a while, let a few things heal up.
Week, 2 weeks, months, 2 months?
A few months.
Few months, okay.
Few months. Pull them off and on for a week's it's going to create more damage than good.
So I know our horse, the chiropractor comes out, and I guess the chiropractor, you can't ride the horse for 2 to 3 days or something after a chiropractor comes out. I'm not sure. I might be wrong on that. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. And, that's up to the chiropractor and their call and how much they have to do as far as adjustment on the horse. Also, with like having joint injections, you have to back off for a little bit when you've had a joint injection.
Okay. So laying down is not really, 2 or 3 days. You're talking months and months at a time.
Sometimes horses have had a tough run of it, and sometimes it's good to back off of them for several months at a time. Used to be with eventing, you had a spring season and a fall season. Now they pretty much go year round. So you back down in the winter, you back down in the summer. And they give the tendon ligament damage stuff time to heal up.
So horse hoof care is important on a regular basis. Now, you're not just talking about shoeing the horse. You're talking about the actual care of the hoof itself.
Right. Just even with trimming horses, if you start stretching that trim way out and you've got flares where the foot it's like somebody's tried to pull the toe away.
Okay.
You're stretching against the lamina, and you're putting torque against the lamina, which as you stretch it out weakens the structure of the foot, and you start losing stability of the foot. And yes, people try to do it to save money or whatever, but if you end up creating damage where it gets ends up getting expensive, you really didn't save anything, and you may have caused problems with your horse
down the line.
I've got one right now that has a bunch of holes up the hoof wall where I know that for years it was like, let's don't trim the horse until the feet get long and they flare out all over the place. And now why did we end up with all this damage? Well, it's because the hoof wall was stressed out and the lamina was stressed, and it gave it a weakened area. This was a barefoot horse. You can't blame it on shoes. I don't know if this horse has ever worn shoes. But it was not maintained on a regular basis. If you had shoes on, we could always blame it on shoes because we did do it on a regular basis.
Right.
When you start losing the structure of the foot, where people say, oh, well, we got flares now, it's time to shoe the horse. We really ever shot the time window where you should have, and that's shoeing or trimming.
And what age of a horse do you see this? Is it like early in the stages of shoeing a horse? Is this later, the horse has gotten old, we're not really riding as much anymore? We'll do it as needed, not the regular intervals that normally would happen.
Well, it kind of happens at any stage. And I'll tell you, like breeding operations, when I first started this, we trimmed babies. We trimmed babies regular. And I'm not saying all breeding operations, but, it seems like it's gotten more the thing to do to let them grow up out in the field. We leave them alone, bring them up at 2 or 3 years old. Oh, can we fix this? And that's like your high-low feed. We've seen more of that than we ever have. And if you're going to do something with that, it's something we're going to do we need to be moving on in the first 3 months of age. And you look at a horse and you talk about it and say, no, I want to wait and see. 2 years old, can you fix that? We need this fixed. Kind of late now.
All right, so here's my question for you. So let's say someone gave you a horse that's 2 years old, never really been ridden, always just been on a lead line, that knows the standards, in the round pen and all that, and knows the directions, but never been broken. So obviously never really had shoes on it. So 2 years old, of course, you break a horse at what age? 2 years old, right? Approximately?
Some people do. Some people wait till later.
So
some people break them earlier.
So at the age of 4, finally got her first set of shoes. Is that too late even after being broken to have shoes put on?
No. And there again, we were talking about the high-low situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's not the situation with the horse, that's not even an issue. But, if the mechanics are where they should be with the foot for the horse as it is, there's no law that says we ever have to put a shoe on a horse if we got enough mass there. You can have a perfectly balanced foot and no mass, and we got a problem. And you need enough mass to the foot. If we cannot grow sole because the mechanics are blown out of whack and we got too much pressure against the sole corium, we need to do something to get enough sole depth under a horse, because not having sole under a horse is certain situations can get really dangerous.
And all this is leading to preventing low polymer angle. And when we come back, we'll dive into what is low polymer angle and the best way to prevent it. And I have a couple questions for Mike. Of course, my questions are not as fun as what we're talking about here. So stick around. You'll listen to Mike Stine, Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. We'll be right back.
It's working.
Good.
I think.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We don't have 1 million viewers yet, but we're going for it.
Yeah. We'll have it in no time at all. All right, here we go. You ready? Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, a certified APF1. A member, I'm sorry, I'm going to start that again.
I think the APF calls it an accreditation.
All right, so accreditation APF1. Mike Stine, and we are creating sounder horses from the ground up. And I have a question for you, Mike. And over there to my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
Yes, sir. How are you today,
I'm doing
Travis?
well. I have a question for you, and this is a very simple question. I don't know if you can relate to this or not. Why are saddles $7,000?
Because they can be.
Jeez, my wife bought a saddle from overseas, and she had it fitted and tucked and fluffed and cuffed and ducked and all the stuff that went with it. It didn't work out, so now she's bought another one, and now she only had the one from overseas for like maybe a month or two. It's sliding on the horse. No matter what they've done, it slides on the horse. So now she's got another one, $7,000 saddle. I know, must be nice, right? And she's in the process of selling the other one on consignment for, I think, $500 less than she paid for the other one. But still, why? It's a saddle. I can't imagine. Well, I can imagine shoes. I'm talking people shoes, not horse shoes. Saddles are just so expensive for what they do. But I mean, I guess there's a lot of science to it. I'm not a horse guy. I'm a radio guy. That's all I am. I love to ask the simple questions for the common man. And hopefully that's what this show will attract, the common person who's just learning how to do horses, or even if you're a veteran of horses, you just want to learn something about horses or hear people talk about horses in general. So I just don't understand. I just don't get it. $7,000 for a saddle. I just don't get it. But I'll pay $1,000 or $2,000 for great tires for my car or my truck. I'll do that. But I guess that would be the same thing, would it not?
That's a very similar thing. And there is a lot of science that goes into a saddle. And, it must work with your horse, or you really bought a doorstop.
Yeah, basically. I learned about the tree and the length and the honk and the tie and I don't know. It's sad that I know this much about what I literally don't pay any attention to at all.
Well, it is ensuring one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You never get a chance to retire.
Well, this is true. Now, we were talking earlier about how often you should do hoof care, and this is all leading into how to prevent low palmar angle. Now, before we prevent low palmar angle, tell me what low palmar angle is and what's the difference between front legs and back legs and all the stuff that links those.
Well, you hear a lot of talk about low palmar angle, and there are people that will say low palmar angle talking about hind feet, which is palmar is the front feet. You have
And where does the word Palmer come from? It was like Dr. Palmer discovered the front feet and Dr. Planter discovered the back feet or something, or is there an actual medical term for it?
What they're speaking of is to the bottom of the coffin bone.
And don't forget, for every podcast that we do, we also have a matching video as well. I forgot to mention that earlier. This is the first show that we've been doing, so forgive me if I don't plug everything that we're doing. You can see myself and Mike Stine on the YouTube channel, and the way you see that is go to Equine Dynamics on YouTube. Just search Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, and you'll see every podcast we do. If you guys want to email pictures and stuff to equinedynamics.com, we can show them up on the screen so we can talk about it. Mike Stine can see them in real time. You guys can see them in real time as we're talking about them here. That's the Equine Dynamics over at YouTube as well. I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead. So the Palmer foot, as he's held, the reason why I say that is because he's holding his hand up to the camera.
Well, yeah, I look good on radio, but the Palmer angle are referring to the bottom of the coffin bone, between the ground plane of the coffin bone and the ground. The coffin bone is the bone inside the foot that fairly well dictates the shape of the hoof capsule. The Palmer angle, if it is lower than it should be, you're creating more pressure against the sulcorium, which creates problems with blood flow. And you've got to have blood flow to the sulcorium. If you're cutting that off, your horse is going to be hard to grow soul depth. The other thing is when it's at too low of a pitch, your lateral cartilages, you're compressing there. You're causing tendon pressure that you don't want. Your center of the foot, because of that angle dropping, actually shifts forward to the bone column. So, and this is something we're going to work with the vet. And I work in vet clinics a lot, and we have a number of vets that I will work with where when we got mechanical issues, movement problems, and all this, well, the feet look okay. Well, sometimes when you take that picture of the foot, take your x-rays, and we start seeing what's going on, well, ooh, we got a different picture.
Now, when you say you work with a vet, does the vet come out to where you're out, or do you take the horse and everything to the vet?
Yes and yes.
Well, all right.
I do go.
Which one do you recommend? I mean, where do you get the best results? What's the, you know, the, I don't want to say best bang for the buck, but, you know, where are you going to get the most help from?
The most help from is usually going to be in the clinic.
Okay.
Because the floor is very, you know, consistent at the clinic as far as is that floor is as perfectly close to level as we can get.
So you don't trust like the barn floors or anything like that? Like our barn's got a poured slab. You don't trust that slab?
It depends on how well they finished your slab and how level it is and all that. Because I've got barns where there are slabs, and the whole slab, if you put a marble on it, if you know, of course you don't want a slick finished floor, but if you put a marble on it, it'll roll to one corner.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
So when you start looking at joint spacings, be it laterally or shooting your DP shot from the front to the back of the hoof capsule, if you've got an uneven floor and we're shoeing against that and the coffin bone is cocked sideways just a little bit, it's going to skew that picture. So if we make adjustments off of that, guess what?
Everything's going to be offline.
That's going to tweak something where we don't necessarily want it to be. And, you know, usually when I'm working in the vet clinic, because a lot of times the vet's on the road, they've got a call somewhere. They may have a colic around the corner. They can shoot my first shots and take off. In the clinic, I can get follow-up shots, make our adjustments, check our adjustments, and go from there. And if I'm not quite where I want to be, we can look at that, readjust, and then move forward. And that's why a clinical situation, if you have a critical problem, is always the better way to go.
So this is basically, so all the stuff that we've been talking about today leads up to this one thing, which is to prevent the low Palmer angle, or to prevent the...
Well, the low Palmer angle is tied to joint damage, ligament damage.
Okay, so low Palmer angle
problems.
Low Palmer angle is a bad thing to have.
Yeah, low to negative is a bad thing to have.
Gotcha.
Most horses are going to be happier with a bit of a positive Palmer angle. I think Doc Redland likes to look at about tries to think in 5 degrees because you can see that. But all of them are going to have a happy spot that's a little bit different. There's no exact on it. But when you start working with lame horses, typically if you adjust it up, and we're not talking about laminitis at this moment, and there are laminitic horses that will collapse over backwards and have a negative plane.
Now, all this is before you even put a shoe on. So all this needs to be corrected before shoes, or is this in addition to shoes? Because I remember I went to a farrier in Orlando, and I said, hey, let me have some of your horseshoes because we're going to do like the folk decorations for our wedding and stuff, and we're going to paint them all and do all that stuff. But some of the shoes had a pad, like a leather piece on the pad, and my wife before we got married, she was saying that, oh, this horse had a blank because it had a pad on it. And what is the pad? Is that part of that?
Yeah, the pad is part of that. Like if you look at the shoe job on your wife's horse right now,
okay,
I do have a leather wedge pad in the front.
Okay.
To bring that up, because she was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but she was flat to negative as far as the palmar angle. Also, I have boxed back the toe to bring the mechanics further up onto the bone column, because with it going low, it shoots forward to the bone column. And I have hammer rolled the front of the shoe to get more of a roll motion across the front, so it's not like trying to pull across the board and it creates torque against the tendons. And if you start torquing against that hard, it wants to pull it down. And I've done a few other things with rocker action in the shoe and all that to allow that palmar angle to float up.
So left unattended. I mean, if you get this guy who, like you said, 6-pack of beer on the very pilot episode of this podcast, you said guy out there just ferrying just because he wants a 6-pack of beer. If left unattended and putting shoes on these horses, you're going to think your horse is not responding to you like when you're trying to get it to go left or to try to get it to go right when you're riding or doing your lessons and stuff out there. You think it's you because the horse is not, the feet aren't working well.
Well, that will affect the rotation of the shoulder. It will affect you drop it down, start dropping that angle down, they'll start bracing their shoulders, start losing range of movement in their shoulders. And you're trying to get the horse to move forward. And it's both front and hind end, and you start locking their shoulders up. They can't get their hind end through. You want them to raise their back up. Well, they can't get their hind end through to raise their back up when you're asking for collection.
So it's very important to have someone that knows the horse basically, and we preach this all the time, from the ground up. I mean, it's not just slapping on a metal shoe, or what are the shoes made of, by the way? Because I don't know.
Most farriers prefer steel.
Okay, just regular steel?
Regular steel, and since a hot shoe, I can take that steel and make it act how I want it to, pretty much.
Right.
It's like your saddle fit. You got a horse that's collapsed in the back and you want your horse to round up. If you fit the saddle to that collapsed back, well, guess what? You got to have a comfortable place for the horse to move up into. So if the saddle drops, you get the same thing in reverse, and that can affect your palmar angle, because if they're dropping them out, locking the shoulders, you'll start compressing that angle.
So, like you said, it all starts from the ground up, and it's very important to have a knowledgeable, and Mike Stine is very knowledgeable. He's been doing this for God knows how many years, and he's got an alphabet soup full of certifications and stuff. All right, we're going to take one more little quick break and wrap up the show and let you guys get back to what you got to do. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
I'm starting to warm up finally, I think.
You got to get that engine run. That's why I'm letting it run long. I'll let it run long, and then I can go in there and kind of tuck and tape and do all that stuff. So don't worry about the time or anything on that. It's the first show. Both of us are learning each other's.
We get doing it regular, it'll become just more of a natural thing.
What do you got planned for the rest of the day? Anything?
I'm probably going to go get my hair cut.
Okay. Thanks for doing it before or after the show.
Well, sorry.
I know. I was sitting in there, and I was finishing up breakfast and stuff, and she's like, "Are you going to get ready for the show?" I said, "Yeah, let me make my coffee, and I'll go in there and comb my hair and stuff." She's like, "Are you going to shave?" I go, "Well, normally I shave everything on Wednesday. If I shave now, then I got to shave again on Wednesday." So I just kind of cut my lines just to make my face a little bit. Like, go shave.
Yeah, my wife's fussing about this the other day, but every now and then I have to do that.
Yeah.
It's great when you get a glob of acrylic and you struggle something, you go like that and you get acrylic in it. Because there's only one good way to get it out.
Take it off. Take it off.
And sometimes it's just pull.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Over to my far right side is the one and only Mike Stine.
Hello, Travis.
If you have any questions, we want you guys to be part of the show. The way you do that is go to equinedynamics.com. If you have any questions, any comments, any pictures you'd like to share with Mike Stine, you just want to get his opinion on something, go ahead and email him, and do me a favor and up in the subject line, just put podcast so he can separate it from all his other emails that he gets from like bill collectors and stuff. Now, before we let you guys go, we're going to wrap it up by saying, what did we learn today? So today, what did we learn? Shoe a horse or leave them barefoot?
It depends on the situation.
All right. And number 2, why is it important to have hoof care on regular intervals?
Well, good to keep your horse's feet up on regular intervals for performance issues, for avoiding the vet clinic, because the vet clinic gets expensive. We love our vets, but we don't want to make them a lot of money.
And this all leads into how to prevent low palmar angle, and what is a low palmar angle?
I think we mostly talked about low palmar angle, and depending on the situation, there's a lot of different ways you will handle that. Everybody's got a big tool bag, and it depends on what you need to pull out that day. But just the fact of what's going on externally of the foot, you don't always know without shooting an x-ray and getting some good x-rays, because there are big differences in x-rays and x-rays.
Gotcha. All right, on that note, we're going to let you guys get back to what you've got to do. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us. Download us, make sure you subscribe, and you get the very next podcast. We do a podcast every Monday, and that'll be available Monday afternoon, usually on your podcatchers. iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes will be out there for a little bit. Just search Equine Dynamics Podcast with Mike Stine, and you can find us as well. On behalf of Mike Stine over there,
have a good day. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time.
Just close your eyes.